Hey friends, welcome to another Monday Musing. My name's Timothy, though some people do call me Tim, and today our community-led question is brought to us by Uncia420, who asks, how would you recommend using ancient texts with long-dead languages given that a warlock invocation and a spell found in 4 different spell lists can just read anything that is part of a written language? And this is a great question I've been sitting on for a little while, and I do apologize for that, Uncia, which I'm probably saying wrong, but who knows what it's meant to be. First and foremost, let me get this sort of public service announcement answer out of the way, but if it is not important to the gameplay that you are trying to establish and the overall story that you're trying to put out there, then just let them have the win. Right? People taking that, even though it seems like such a trivial choice on their spell list or such a small number of their invocations that they've put aside to have this ability, if these characters are choosing to have that ability, they probably really want to be able to have that ability and the opportunity to occasionally flex and say, why, yes, I did have that prepared, or I can read all writing, is a moment that just excites certain players because they got to make that choice and now they're getting rewarded for it. So give them the win if it's not crazy important. However, if you're trying to set up some globe-trotting mystery where they're supposed to pick up clues from various places and the dead language that you've got there is important to drive the narrative, either towards specific NPCs who might be experts or so that you can piecemeal it out to the players a little bit, then I have a handful of suggestions. First is to remember that things like comprehend languages translate in the literal, not in any kind of figurative. They don't help with any kind of tensing, phrasing, or long-dead format for how words are organized. If any of you have ever played around with learning a second language, then you know that it can be quite confusing trying to understand what somebody is saying even after you have translated their words into a language that you're familiar with. For me, I know that when I was a typist at church for a deaf man in our congregation, I would type down what was being said furiously, and occasionally he would try to type a message back for me to pass along to other people, and I would have a really hard time understanding what his message was. Even though all of the words that he typed were in perfect English, they weren't in the order that I was accustomed to, and his overall meaning was not the same because he didn't speak English as his primary language. His primary language was American Sign Language, and that really made a big difference to how he was thinking. For me, I also have the streak on Duolingo trying to learn Spanish, and I tell you what, I definitely put sentences together absolutely wrong all the time while trying to go through that process. So you can play around a little bit with translations that are going to perhaps be harder to understand in that manner. Another idea is that in most written culture, we tend to use colloquialisms or stories and parables that are often based on our own knowledge at the time, and we just assume that everybody else is going to know the story. If I say David and Goliath, most people have a pretty decent clue if they've got any kind of Christian background or leanings to it, and even a lot of people who don't. But there are people in the world who, if you talk about a David and Goliath situation, they're not going to have a single clue what you're talking about. And so by including some proper nouns and suggesting different stories in your translations, you can essentially leave the players saying, well, crud, now we have to figure out what this story is about. Who could possibly tell us that? And off they go to the NPC that you've got in mind. Another idea would be to translate a language that is based on glyphs or hieroglyphs or some kind of pictorial language that, again, you could get the literal translation of what that particular rune or pictograph might mean, but putting them together might actually require knowledge of a completely different language in order to be able to translate it effectively from anything other than rock, stone, big word, this, that, whatever it is that you come up with. It could just be still left as a confusing jumble that the players don't understand. Another option would be if the material itself was out of order. Say a great big book that had been torn apart, and then just jumble all the pages together, give it to your players as a hot mess of loose sheets that are not in any way numbered, and perhaps there's a puzzle involved to try and work out which sheet goes where, and you can still require some skill and some investigative ability on part of your players if you want to gate the information a little bit behind that skill check instead of just behind the casting of the spell. Finally, another option that had sprung to mind was the use of ciphers. Just because you can translate something, if it's written in code, you don't automatically get that kind of option, and so you might have to reach out to somebody who has an understanding on ancient ciphers, or might require a player or NPC with the ciphering ability that one of the feats gives you in order to be able to translate the message. And so the spell gives you something that is essentially not yet workable until you go the extra step. So those are just a handful of ideas that have come to me since you originally asked the question, and I hope that they provide you with some help. If anybody else has ideas on how you can handle dead languages in a world where magic can easily translate, and you want there to be some story involved, then please leave them in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and happy adventuring.